Welcome to White Space, DCD's weekly roundup of news from the data centre industry, with me, Peter Judge, news editor Max Smolax, and reporter Sebastian Moss. Now, this week, where's that branding gone? It's all gone to Billingsgate Market, where we have just had the Zettastructure event, which I thought went great. And we had actual news, including a big announcement from Microsoft.
Yes, Microsoft has announced Project Olympus. Now, Project Olympus, it took me a while to wrap my head around it, but essentially it's two things. It is a server family for hyperscale data centers, well, not just hyperscale, for any kind of data center really, but it's also an open hardware development model.
Okay, so Microsoft has made these servers and shared them with OCP, is that it?
Just like with any OCP project, Microsoft needs to submit a design document to the foundation so it gets accepted, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, vendors usually submit their projects when they're 100% finished. And that sort of like destroys some of the benefits of open hardware, right? You don't get that community participation, you don't get, like design forks, which are like, good for this sort of thing. With Project Olympus, Microsoft has created a design document which is just half finished.
Okay.
And now they're essentially asking for community participation. They're saying, tell us what you want in there, help us build this thing, and project is actually going to be finished in about 8 months. And by that time, Microsoft hopes to create a partner ecosystem around it and basically make it as useful as possible. And it's like, there's plenty of things interesting about Project Olympus. It is a different kind of server. But I believe you know something about power distribution that most of us don't.
Okay, yes, well, although it's within the Open Compute project, it is like its own ecosystem within that, and it doesn't have to use everything that Open Compute does. So, although Open Compute's open racks are powered with DC power for efficiency reasons, Project Olympus, or Microsoft's Azure hardware team that's kicked this off, has made a decision early on that this ought to have AC power. We've sat down with Kushagra Vaid, who's told us in some detail about this. But in summary, distributing power over DC, you save power, you save energy by not that's lost in converting between different voltages, etc. But you lose more energy in transmitting power over DC, because you've got Ohm's law, and you've got the more electrons move in DC, whereas in AC power they more or less dance on the spot. Also, I guess an AC power distribution might be more suitable for some things like enterprise type data centers, and there's the phase. Using the three-phase power, delivering the three phases through to the servers. Kushagra can explain why that's better than I can. But it wasn't all happening just at Zettastructure, though sometimes it felt that way. There's more Open Compute news from the rest of the world.
Well, it's from the Telco Infra Project. Facebook have built their own packet optical switches called Voyager, and they're testing out in Equinix facilities at the moment. It's not as open as that. They did it in-house. They came with a finished product, but the testing, there's a bit of back and forth. There's apparently showed zero packet loss, significant cost savings.
Equinix is kind of jumping on this as another way of improving connections between its data centres.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Equinix are always trying to get their foot in the door, their wedge in on anything that will, for interconnection, because that's their bread and butter.
And they're a huge customer. I mean, if they do really deploy these, that's going to be, like validation of everything the Telco Infra Project is doing. So, good luck. But
so is Telco Infra Project an Open Compute project thing?
It is not. It is completely separate. They're collaborating, but Open Compute has its own telecoms project, which is essentially about adopting the existing open compute stuff to the needs of the telecoms. And at the Zettastructure, we had representatives of Verizon and SK Telecom who are leading the project, essentially two guys who chaired it. And it wasn't a big session, just like about a dozen people, but like the content which came out was amazing, because these are not your traditional data center people. Their requirements are quite different. But we've heard about this before, like, oh yeah, it has to be different. How different, right? Mm-hmm. And this is the interesting part. So like some of the things that telecoms have to consider that the traditional data center people don't include fire resistance. Mm-hmm. Because every data center is equipped with fire suppression. A lot of telecoms, so like, equipment cabinets are not. Mm-hmm. So they need to isolate them with special materials, and that, that has an effect on heat generation, obviously. So like this area will heat up more. So you need to think about that as well. Seismic requirements. Mm-hmm. And they're doing some interesting things with bracing doors and the fact that, for example, if you put just one open compute rack on its own, it's going to fall down. But if you chain three of them together, bolt them to each other, they actually pass the seismic tests. And they've done simulations, they're doing shake tables, like something that data center people, again, don't have to do. And then there's things like EMI shielding, because that's in the regulation, and infrastructure management software, because traditional DSIM is not good for these things. So they're thinking about something which is like DSIM, but more suitable for telecoms needs. And there, I believe, Nokia is developing a special software suite. Again, Nokia was there, promoted their software. No matter what kind of hardware you're using, our software is nice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, these are some of the things. Oh, and then 48 volt DC throughout.
And that telco project is like a test case for people that kind of said, open compute is all very well, but it's only useful for people like Facebook, and there are very few of those. It's never going to be applied to different markets. That's what people said. And here we go. The telco project is a different market, which is applying these open compute ideas. So that's it's a sign of the times.
But again, do not get overly optimistic. These are still, they're still in trial stages, and both Verizon and SK are running deployments, but deployments are small, tiny. They're just testing it out. So, fingers crossed. Yeah, we'll see how it develops.
Okay. Now you mentioned fire suppression. Some interesting stuff came up at the event at Zettastructure about fire suppression. It's not on the website yet, but as you'll remember, during this year, we've had a couple of incidents where data centres failed because of fire suppression. The fire suppression thing was triggered either by an actual fire possibility or a false alarm, or in one case, just a scheduled test. And these fire suppression systems explosively push inert gas out into the data centre to prevent fires from taking hold. The trouble is they push it out so fast that the noise or shockwave from that expansion is enough to shake hard drives.
Scares them.
Yeah, okay. So we've had two separate and overlapping bits of science done about this that were reported at Zettastructure. One is Tyco did some research into why hard drives are becoming more susceptible to damage, which is an interesting thing. Whenever you hear about how increased capacity is coming into hard drives, you think about how it's done. It's done by maybe putting in more platters, maybe making the heads fly closer to the platter so that they can resolve smaller magnetic domains. Okay, that flying closer to the platter makes them more susceptible. So I had not realised this before, but hard drives are becoming more fragile, and this is a concern to people in the data centres. The solution is actually going to be possibly far easier than people thought. Firstly, Tyco have designed acoustic nozzles. They push out the gas without creating the same sort of shock waves, and this apparently will be safe enough to be positioned close to the hard drives, and eventually, it's not there yet, but there will be a version of these nozzles that can be retrofitted onto your existing fire suppression systems.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Problem solved? Maybe, but also the problem could potentially be avoided.
How?
Because now, you may be aware of Future Facilities. They're computational fluid dynamics experts. They model the convection flow of heat through data centres, up through racks, and generally speaking, so far we've seen them doing projects to minimise PUE by getting the cooling to the right place and preventing sort of the kind of circulation of heat that wastes energy. They've gone into the physics and found that their calculations, the fluid dynamics they use, can even apply to the very high speeds that come out of nozzles. So they can model the fire suppression system, and they've proven that. Regulations have said you have to put the nozzles in zones and distribute them throughout the area where you're suppressing the fire. Future Facilities think that it may be possible to position the nozzles slightly more remotely from the hard drive and still have the same effect and not produce a shockwave, or produce a shockwave that is weak enough by the time it reaches the hard drive that it doesn't affect them. So lots of science, and the problems of vibration damage from fire suppression systems, the solutions are on their way, and so a first glances of that were shown at Zettastructure. Brilliant. Okay, but it's entirely possible that other things were happening outside Zettastructure. Is that so?
Yeah, there was actually quite a few news stories for
Yeah, good. Any juicy failures?
There were, the fire, but no suppression. It was in Ford's big headquarters. They had an electrical substation in their basement, just doing all of the place caught on fire. Had to switch off their on-site data center. The disaster recovery sites didn't kick up in time, so they were delayed with sales data and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, even if you build your data center nice, beware what other things are near it that might catch fire.
Yeah. I didn't hear of any people hurt.
No, yeah.
That's obviously of less interest to
yeah,
us.
Yeah.
But apparently, there was a big evacuation.
But
injuries.
People.
Okay.
And I'll be very quick with the news. There was CenturyLink are buying Level 3 for $25 billion.
And another acquisition?
Another acquisition. Broadcom to acquire Brocade, like little bro hangout. Although they're getting rid of the IP networking division, which they're looking for a buyer if anyone's interested.
Okay.
Tesla have doubled their power pack and Powerwall energy densities. We haven't really, AWS started testing them last year. We don't know yet, but it's something that when it gets to the point where we're a bit cheaper, I can see that being cool. We've got more. They're going to be a zero outage standard. They want to build. A bunch of tech companies saying,
a
new standard, a new consortium, a new association, a new framework, new regulatory ideas that everyone could look forward to perusing, except they haven't actually put them up yet.
There's not even a website, right?
Well, there's a website that looks very 90s.
It's more empty than their white space.
Yeah, exactly. And it just says coming soon, so soon. And then Apple are still trying to get their data center in Ireland built, and 3 people now have filed a high court injunction against it, but a bunch of other locals really want it because they want investment and jobs. So there's going to be a march this Sunday, I think.
In support of Apple data center.
Absolutely for Apple, but then there's a lot of miscommunication going on around it, a lot of social media spinning stories, but so it's very difficult to gauge just exactly how many people want it and how many people don't. But we'll see. We'll have a look at the march. We'll see if we can get photos of how many people are there. That'd be very interesting. And the UK are going to spend £1.9 billion pounds over the next 5 years on cybersecurity. And they said this previously, but now we've got a new chancellor, a new government, and of note was they mentioned a lot that they would retaliate against anyone who attacks them in a cyber war. maybe someone hasn't told them that you can't always tell who has attacked you.
Yes.
Yes, and some of that money is going to be spent on the firewall they want to build around the island, right?
Yeah.
To stop spam and malicious software.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
but it's and that's just a selection of the news. Obviously, the website has more breaking.
Yes.
constantly.
More detail on all these stories on
Yeah,
the site.
and more stories.
Yes. And more issues of the magazine are in the pipeline.
Space.
Okay. Brilliant. Good. So that's all from White Space for this week. We'll see you next week and see you in person at some of our events, we hope.